20 symptoms of endometriosis. Number 1, okay, chronic pelvic pain. So persistent pain in your pelvic area, either before or during menstruation, can be a sign of endometriosis. Now that is because the sticky tissue that represents what would normally be within the lining of the womb sticks bits and pieces together internally, bits of tissues, all in the wrong place, and so that can then cause pain, particularly in and around your period time. 20 symptoms of endometriosis part 2, okay? So this is painful periods. This is like the severe cramping that you might get, and they begin before your period and then they can extend several days after your menstrual period as well, okay? So this isn't just like a little twinge here and there. This is like something that is quite sustained over a period of time, and that can be a sign and a symptom of endometriosis. 20 symptoms of endometriosis. Number 3, pain during intercourse. Okay, so this is where you feel like everything's bruised or being ripped apart inside when you're having intercourse, and that is because everything's stuck together. And so when you're moving it around, you feel pain and discomfort. Now it's important to note that this doesn't happen in everybody, as do any of the symptoms, and this is why endo is quite difficult to diagnose, because you could have XYZ symptoms and they could have ABC and you've both got endo. 20 symptoms of endometriosis. Number 4, pain with bowel movements or urination, and this is particularly during menstruation, okay, because there's a lot of movement going on there anyway, and then you're adding to that pressure that's going on, and that pressure is something that is pulling all of that stuck tissue together. It's pulling it apart out of where it's been stuck, so that's why. 20 symptoms of endometriosis part 5, excessive bleeding. So this is heavy periods generally speaking, but you could also have bleeding between your periods as well, and that is a sign that you should get checked out anyway, regardless of whether it's endo or it's not endo, but you should get these kinds of things checked out. 20 symptoms of endometriosis part 6, infertility. And so difficulty conceiving can often be the only symptom that women experience when they go to the doctor and say, you know, I need something looking at, and then it turns out you might have some other things going on as well. But this is a big sign of endometriosis, something that alerts women. And the reason that it can be a problem is for all sorts of reasons. That's not very helpful, is it? But I've got so many other videos on it as well, so check out the information below as well on that. 20 symptoms of endometriosis. Number 7, this is fatigue, okay? So if you are feeling like that chronic tiredness that is debilitating, that goes on all the time pretty much, even if you've had adequate rest, then that can be a sign of endometriosis. It can be a sign of all sorts of things, but endometriosis is one of them. What is happening in your body is that it's running faster in the background than it should be doing. It's like having a slow phone when you've got all your apps open in the background, and so there's not enough energy then left to run your body optimally. 20 symptoms of endometriosis part 8, digestive issues. So if you experience things like bloating, nausea, diarrhea, or constipation, you know, one or the other, and any other basic gastrointestinal problems, especially if you have those during menstruation, then that can be a sign of endometriosis and something that you should get checked out. And that is often one of the reasons that IBS and endometriosis are misdiagnosed. People will say, I've got IBS, and actually it turns out further down the line, perhaps when they're struggling with infertility, that it isn't as much IBS as endo. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, and this is lower back pain. Number 9, okay? So lower back pain can very often come because if you think that you've got this pelvic region that most often is affected by endometriosis, not necessarily always, but most often, then that links to your back because everything in your body is linked. And so if you have tissue stuck together in the front, that's going to be pulling on the back, or it might actually be that the endometrial like tissue is actually sticking the muscles and the tissues around your back area as well together, and so then you get constant back pain. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, part 10. This is pain in your legs and your thighs. Now, very often this can be as a result, we were talking about lower back pain, something similar, where that tissue and your nerves are being stuck together, and then that is because of the way that the, particularly sciatic nerve, but other tissues and nerves as well, run down through your buttock and down your legs and your thighs from this area here. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, number 11, spotting between your periods. Like bleeding or spotting outside of your regular menstrual cycle can be an indication of endometriosis. Okay, so you should get that checked out because it could be a sign of all sorts of different things, endometriosis being one of them. So it's always good just to get all these things that are unusual checked out. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, number 12. Urinary symptoms. Okay, so this frequent urination, need to go, and urgency of pain when you're peeing, that can often be mistaken as a urinary tract infection, but actually it can also be a sign of endometriosis because all of this area here, if it's all stuck together, you're not able to hold it as well. It can cause pain when you're pushing down, just like your bowel movements that we discussed in one of the other videos. So yeah, get that checked. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, number 13. Pain during ovulation. So when there's any kind of movement in an area that could potentially be stuck together, then that can create pain. So ovulation is something where you have movement that's going on, and basically A needs to get to B, and so if there's something constricting that, you're going to feel some pain. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, number 14, swollen abdomen. So this is often referred to as the endobelly. You get really bloated, you look pregnant, and that can be a really big common symptom of endometriosis. Essentially, that is to do with an effect, generally speaking, of something that you've eaten, and your body reacts to it by overstimulating, and therefore you get the endobelly. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, number 15, nausea and vomiting. If you are feeling sick for absolutely no reason, then you should probably go to the doctors anyway, just to get everything checked out. But that is also a sign, especially if it's coming during menstruation, that you might have some endometriosis knocking around. 20 signs of endometriosis, number 16, pain during exercise. So we talked about what's going on internally, everything being stuck together, and therefore if there's internal movements such as ovulation, going to the toilet, etc. happening, then that can create pain because you're pulling this tissue that's been stuck together apart. Okay, so the same happens if you're can happen if you're exercising, and again, not everybody feels it, but if you're exercising and your movement, particularly around the pelvic areas, that's where most endo seems to hang around, then that can be a symptom that you've got some endometriosis there. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, part 17. So this is pain in the rectum, and again, this is an area that is in the locality, and so if it's all tied up and stuck together, then you can get some pain, because if you think about when you move, things are attached and they move, and therefore you feel some pain. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, number 18, mood changes. So irritability, depression, anxiety, they are often linked to chronic pain, which generally you're in anyway if you have endometriosis, but also hormonal changes, okay? And so whilst hormones are not the root cause of endometriosis, there's a root cause of the hormonal changes, and if your hormones are out of balance, then your moods will be out of balance because they're controlled by your hormones. 20 symptoms of endometriosis, number 19, difficulty breathing or chest pain. So in rare cases, endometrial tissue has even been found in the brain, it's been found in men. This is not a women's issue like we used to think it was. So your endometrial tissue can be anywhere in your body. With me personally, they found it around my kidneys, okay? So you may well feel that you have a difficulty, like a tightness, difficulty breathing in your diaphragm and your lung area, and that can actually be endometriosis. So it's worth getting it checked for any reason anyway, but it could be endometriosis. 20 symptoms of endometriosis. Number 20, allergies and food sensitivities. This is a big one, and this relates to some of the other things like the bloating and the lethargy that you can tend to feel. So you do have an increased sensitivity to certain types of foods, which results in an allergic reaction, and that is the inflammation and the bloating, your body going into overdrive to help the process of that. So that is it. We reached number 20. Check out the other videos because there's a lot more than these symptoms on here.